The aroma of scorched onions still turns my stomach. That afternoon, it wasn't just the broth that got ruined. It was the final shred of trust I held for my mother and father. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sort that always carried a heavy weight inside my parents' home. The kitchen felt cramped, the atmosphere dense with vapor and judgment. My mother, Sandra, hovered near the stove in her worn-out apron, the one that once proudly displayed, "Family is everything." She had long ago scorched away the everything section. I had come over with my 6-year-old boy, Noah. He was petite for his years, kind-hearted, quiet, far too gentle for my father's approval. "He's inherited your fragile frame," Dad would mutter whenever Noah stumbled or wept. That afternoon, Mom had prepared chicken broth, her method of showing she still had some concern, the type of dish served alongside barbs rather than seasoning. I arranged the plates while Noah lingered by the edge, gripping a spoon far too large for his small fingers. He was assisting, exactly as I once attempted to do. He lowered the spoon into the vessel, beaming with pride. "Grandma, I can mix it." Mom fixed him with a stare sharp enough to cut through the tension. "You'll make a spill, sit down now." But he hesitated, as children often do. The utensil slid, broth sprayed across the surface, then onto the tiles. A minor accident, nothing significant, yet to my mother it signaled a major offense. The vessel slammed down before I could react. A loud crash echoed. Noah shrieked. I paused for a brief moment until I noticed his delicate fingers trapped under the rim of the weighty metal pot. His palm quivered, liquid trickling along his arm, a red mark appearing immediately. "What is happening?" I yelled, rushing to him and pulling his hand loose. Mom remained unmoved. She simply adjusted her apron and remarked, "He'll learn next time to avoid clumsiness. You should have trained him better." Noah's wails reverberated through the space, reflecting off the surfaces and the harshness. My father glanced up from the sofa, where he'd been sipping drinks and viewing a repeat of some vintage quiz program. He gave one look at Noah's puffed-up digits, then chuckled. "Perhaps he requires hardening," he commented, dismissing it. "That's what lads require, not affection." My sight grew hazy. "He's just a kid," I yelled. Dad smirked, took another gulp, and mumbled, "So were you once. See what became of you." Noah's small frame shuddered as he pressed his face into my torso, his sobs dampening my clothing. I embraced him firmly, sensing that familiar powerlessness resurfacing, the very same vulnerability I'd experienced while growing up in that identical space. I wished to depart immediately, but lacked transportation. My parents had urged us to stay the weekend due to my sister's upcoming birthday. Family custom, Mom had claimed, as if she truly valued such bonds. Noah's cries softened into quiet gasps. His palm pulsed with purple hues. I required something cold for him. I pulled open the ice compartment, only to catch Mom's voice behind me. "You always exaggerate," she stated, her manner like poison coated in sweetness. "You were identical, weeping at every minor issue." "No surprise you're still by yourself." I pivoted toward her, the tray shaking in my grip. "You injured my child." She angled her head, fake purity flowing from her expression. "So what?" "Perhaps if you'd guided him properly, I wouldn't need to step in." Dad chuckled once more from his seat. "She's correct, Amber. You're overly delicate. Children require dread, not soothing." I regarded them both, the individuals who had brought me up, and everything fell into place. Every mark, every slight, every occasion I was instructed to endure rather than receive solace. They remained unchanged, they never would alter, but I had evolved. I crouched next to Noah, applying the cold pack softly to his inflamed palm. He winced, yet stayed close. "It's fine, darling," I murmured. "I'm right here. I won't permit anyone to harm you anymore." Mom sneered. "Oh, come on, don't pretend you're some savior today. You couldn't manage without our support." "You're here in our space, recall?" That statement struck deeper than she realized. She was accurate. We were residing with them for a short period. I'd been let go from my position 3 months earlier, housing payments behind, reserves depleted. I'd set aside my dignity for Noah's benefit, wishing perhaps they might handle him kinder than they had me. But that hope proved mistaken. utterly mistaken. Noah gazed at me through moist eyes, murmuring, "Mommy, I want to return home." Those simple words felt like both a blade and an opening. I examined my parents, their expressions self-satisfied and at ease in their harshness. Then I focused on my son, tiny, frightened, and everything I aimed to shield, and I resolved we would depart. Not merely their residence, their entire environment. That evening, once they had retired, I gathered our items without noise. Every closure sounded like a release of sorrow. I placed Noah's small palm in mine, secured his wrapped digits with care, and we ventured into the chilly darkness. The heavens were dark, but for the initial time, they didn't seem vacant. They seemed filled with opportunity. I had no clear destination yet, only that it must be far from that place. And as the entryway illumination wavered behind us, I vowed to myself, if they desired Noah to grow resilient, I'd demonstrate true power. The sort that doesn't shatter young ones, it strengthens them, the sort they could never grasp. The following morning, daylight pierced the damaged shades of the modest inn chamber I'd located on the town's outskirts. The atmosphere carried a musty scent and old brew, yet it was peaceful. Wonderfully peaceful. Noah rested on the mattress near me, his small palm bound in cloth I'd acquired from the drugstore. His digits moved slightly as he slept, a faint sound slipping from his mouth. I perched at the mattress border, gazing at my image in the fractured looking glass. My eyes appeared puffy, my locks tangled, and my spirit felt exposed. I had abandoned every possession, every support system, every link, save the one that counted above all. Noah. I grabbed my device. 20 ignored incoming calls, all from Mom. The final recording held her tone, laced with that harsh, melodic style she employed when faking concern. "Amber, quit overreacting. Return the child. You realize we intended no harm. Mistakes occur." Mistakes, that's how they described crushing a youngster's fingers with cookware. That's how they'd labeled shattering my resolve as well. I erased each recording and restricted her contact. For the first occasion in ages, quietness seemed holy. In the days that followed, I secured a temporary role tidying chambers at that very lodging. The supervisor, a mild-mannered fellow called Greg, posed no inquiries. He offered me a cleaning tool, a tire, and noted, "You appear to deserve another opportunity." I labored until my palms hurt, until my spine protested, but I stayed silent. Every earning, every evening of fatigue held value, for it signified Noah and I were enduring independently. In the evenings, I'd share tales before slumber. He'd nestle nearby, his tiny palm on my limb. "Mommy," he said softly one evening, "will Grandma and Grandpa arrive?" I touched his brow with my lips. "Not if I prevent it, and I will." Time moved on, and gradually our marks, his visible, mine internal, started to diminish, yet history tends to slip through gaps. One evening, while I cleaned the inn flooring, I detected a tone behind me, a tone that twisted my insides. Still tidying up strangers' chaos, I rotated. My sibling, Lindsay, stood present, sporting the identical arrogant smile she'd mastered in her youth. "Mom dispatched me," she declared, tossing her locks. "She's concerned for you and the child." "Inform her there's no need." I continued my task. She snorted, "You're forever so theatrical. You realize Dad didn't intend that chuckle. He was simply traditional. You truly departed over that." I raised my gaze. He chuckled when Mom crushed Noah's palm. He chuckled, "Lindsay. Which aspect of that counts as traditional?" Lindsay averted her eyes. "You forever distort matters." "You're the family's issue, Amber. Always were." I rose, my legs unsteady, yet my words steady. "Then keep away from the issue's existence." Before she uttered more, Greg emerged at the desk. "All fine here, Amber." Lindsay assessed him, smirked, and replied, "Wow, so this defines your existence now. Scrubbing inns and chatting with staff. Miserable." Greg's face stayed neutral, but I noticed a change in his look. Understanding, perhaps, or irritation on my behalf. He rested a palm lightly on my arm and stated, "You needn't endure that." Lindsay laughed. "She forever has to accept it. That's her talent." And with those words she departed, her scent hanging like toxin. That night, I wept under the water flow. Not due to her statements, but because I'd at last understood. They no longer shattered me. They repelled me. Days became weeks once more. Greg assisted me in locating a compact dwelling close by. Nothing luxurious, yet it featured fresh surfaces and a secure entry. Major improvements over my parents' place. Noah began grinning more often, his joy no longer shadowed by hesitation. Yet an unrest lingered within me, for I understood my parents stayed the same. They remained in that identical dwelling, accusing me, altering the narrative. Perhaps even persuading Lindsay I'd lost my senses once again. They'd always instructed me in suffering, but never in accountability. Until this moment. Deep into one night, after Noah slept soundly, I discovered an aged container in my luggage. The one that endured the relocation. Within lay a memory stick. I recalled it right away. My father employed it for storing household images, financial documents, and a section titled Professional Tasks. But I'd long suspected what professional tasks implied. Dad operated as a freelance builder who cut corners, employed phony compliance documents, and submitted bogus claims under colleagues' identities. He'd boasted about it once while intoxicated, claiming, "The authorities owe me far more than I owe them." And Mom, she'd aided him in concealing every detail. I inserted the memory stick into my computer. Everything persisted. Ages of altered documents, proofs, and deceitful submissions linked straight to their identities. My pulse raced. I didn't have to expose it publicly. I didn't need to alert authorities. I merely ensured it reached precisely the spot that would sting deepest, into the messages of those Dad collaborated with. A straightforward message, unidentified, no details, no warnings, just facts. When I pressed transmit, I felt no malice. I felt purified. 3 days afterward, the report emerged. Regional builder facing probe for deceptive contract scandal. Their images appeared on the local broadcast. Mom's tone quivering as she attempted to justify, "We're being targeted." The contrast almost brought a smile, but I held back. I simply watched Noah sketching at the table, daylight warming his recovered palm, and whispered, "Look, dear, fairness doesn't always need volume." Greg arrived that afternoon carrying 2 cold drinks. "You holding up?" he inquired. I affirmed. Stronger than fine. Because for the initial time in my existence, I wasn't enduring in spite of them. I was enduring apart from them, and they were at last experiencing helplessness themselves. 2 months went by before I encountered their faces again. 2 months of calm starts, reliable employment, and chuckles that didn't need to tread lightly around harshness. Noah's palm had mended, only a slight trace lingered. One I gently kissed each evening before rest as if smoothing away their actions. But calm doesn't wipe away recollection. It simply eases facing it. The message arrived from my sibling. I disregarded it initially. Then she messaged, "They're losing it all. They require assistance." I sat gazing at the text for ages. The earlier me who used to shake would have hurried there, desperate. To mend matters. But the person I'd grown into, the parent I'd become, understood otherwise. Yet, interest can sting. I drove over the next day. The identical residence. The identical worn entrance. The identical wilted plants near the stairs, but the feeling differed. Urgent. Empty, diminished somehow. When I entered, the odor struck first. Tobacco haze, scorched meals, old liquor. My father occupied his chair. The one he used to chuckle from, now encircled by vacant containers and untouched correspondence. My mother sat at the surface, her palms unsteady as she eyed a pile of documents. Official warnings, loss warnings, and obligation demands. She raised her eyes. For the first occasion in my life, she appeared aged, not by years but by outcomes. "Amber," she began, her voice breaking, "you arrived. I stayed put. I heard you required support." Dad released a harsh chuckle that faltered midway. "Support? After your actions?" I did nothing, I replied evenly. "You did." He attempted to rise but failed, his limbs supported, his gaze hollow. "You believe you're superior to us now. You and that boy," I met his stare directly. "Superior? No, merely liberated." Mom's mouth quivered. "We're about to forfeit the residence." I moved to the pain, daylight pouring across the barriers that once echoed my shouts. Perhaps that's the result when you construct a dwelling on dread. Her tone escalated, frantic now. We're still your mother and father, Amber. That term, parents, struck me like dust in my airway. No, I said gently, you were my keepers. You brought me up in a place where suffering equaled affection and harshness equaled custom. You chuckled at my son's pain. You lost me well before the dwelling faced ruin. Dad's expression hardened. You believe you can endure without us indefinitely. Existence will wear you down. I smiled lightly. It already has. You were the initial bite. For the first time, quietness. No barbs, no chuckles. Just quietness, heavy and exposed. I surveyed that dwelling, the one that had served as both tomb and cage, and sensed nothing. No resentment, no longing, just liberation. I didn't arrive to pardon you, I stated at last. I arrived to display what true power appears as, the sort you lack the bravery to impart. Mom's eyes welled with moisture she'd never permitted earlier. Amber, I beg, but I was already heading to the exit. Outside, the heavens held the same dull shade as always, but it no longer felt oppressive. It felt like breath. Noah waited in the vehicle, clutching his beloved plush animal. When he spotted me, his grin brightened everything. Mommy, are we heading back now? I agreed. Yes, dear, we're heading back. As I ignited the engine, I peeked once more at the dwelling via the reflection. Two slight shapes outlined in the entrance, observing my departure. The same manner they'd once seen me plead. Only this occasion, I didn't avert my gaze, because they no longer defined the tale. We did. And as Noah hummed quietly in the rear, his tone brimming with purity they could never reach again. I at last sensed what I'd pursued my entire life. Not payback. Calm, the sort that doesn't roar, it simply remains. And in that stillness, I understood something my parents would never comprehend. You can't strengthen a young one by shattering them. You merely instruct them how to endure apart from you.